Brian, how's it?
Good in you, sir.
Thanks for joining me. And I think the whole objective today was I just wanted to just catch up with you and chat. So we bumped into each other at Waxy O'Connor's the other night, which is generally where lots of good discussion starts. Obviously known each other for many years. And I must say, and I'm just saying just because you've joined me today, but when it comes to property industry in KZN, you are undoubtedly, in my mind, the most respected guy in the industry. And I think that extends nationally and internationally. And I think the role you play in terms of urban management and urban policing, it's incredible. And you spoke about that international summit that you had attended, and it really, I mean, it was quite inspiring to listen to it. And just wanted to pick your brain in terms of what's happening and so forth. And I think the reason why I think these discussions are so important is that, I mean, we know it, when it comes to precincts and urban managed areas, it's not just about providing good security and safety and all that kind of stuff. It's about the impact it has on areas and infrastructure and basic confidence and so many different things. And it's a story that has to be told. I mean, we spoke about it earlier. And so, I mean, I think the first question is like, I mean, just for anyone listening, when we talk about a UIP or a management association or a SID as they refer to it in Cape Town, I mean, what are those and why is it so important to the general landscape of property?
Great, thanks, Steph. That was a big reputation to live up. Thank you for that vote of confidence. I think I mean, we're a culture of learning, and I think part of this journey, which we'll share today, is how do we evolve in this world that from 1 month to the next is changing incredibly. I happened to miss this weekend because I turned everything off and we had a long weekend. My kids were home from boarding school, and I turned back on, and suddenly we had the whole Middle East situation exploding. So this whole reality that this world is in a dynamic state of change. And I think maybe if we can zoom out a little bit and look at what's happening globally around this, and then come back to South Africa. So I was very fortunate to be part of the International Downtown Association Leadership Summit. So it's American-based organization, but it's a global entity. And essentially, the collective body representing, for let's call it precinct management or urban management globally. And Cape Town hosted it, and we had delegates from everywhere, from Tokyo, Auckland, Winnipeg, Canada. We had a lot from the States, Houston, Seattle, Dublin. So it was a very global community. And I'm sure we're going to discuss more detail, but essentially this whole precinct manager at a global initiative is to say, well, what municipalities globally have historically done in terms of delivering competitive areas is actually now a thing of the past.
Yeah.
Because internationally, maybe barring Tokyo that was represented there, and even they have their challenges, is that the reality is that global municipalities with urbanization, meaning cannot competitively deliver enabling spaces for businesses, for communities to live in a way that they can consistently attract and retain investment. And I think fundamentally what this whole urban management, precinct management does is creating really awesome places for people to work in and live in and invest in.
Yeah.
And it's about perception and desirability of, I want to go to that place. And so essentially we're managing geospatial locations as a holistic experience, encompassing all the aspects that we'll talk in detail today. But if a place doesn't look safe, it's not going to be safe because it won't feel safe.
Yeah.
And if it's not clean, it's not going to feel safe. And if they don't have awesome attractions to me, why would you want to be in a sterile environment? So it's about curating our experience of public space within a geospatial environment.
Yeah. And then, I mean, when we bumped into each other, you said, I mean, that you assume that in South Africa, we're going to have more challenges than the rest. I mean, you're looking at New York, you're looking at all those different areas, but in reality, it's actually not the case, hey?
Yeah, so I think maybe just the three takeouts, it's probably the three standout takeouts from there. And we spent 5 days in Cape Town.
Yeah.
And the mayor, Cape Town mayor was with us, the deputy mayor with us. Funny enough, I didn't know the deputy mayor's Eddie Andrews, a Springbok front ranker.
Yeah, I was actually
incredible engagement.
I was actually at a Western Cape Development Forum 2 weeks ago, and Eddie Andrews was there, and the mayor spoke, and the premier spoke. Very impressive. And Indiana is for an ex-rugby player, it's quite together.
It's very together. I was super impressed. So, and the Cape is very much to embrace these structures, and they've box smart, very smart.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that later. But the sentiment coming out of that was, and again, this is a global sentiment. Number one, from Tokyo, Auckland, Winnipeg, all of them, Dublin, London. Number one challenge is the extraordinary amount of time professionals like myself, acting on being in representing these managed areas, spend with the municipalities in terms of creating enabling policy for areas, but most importantly, driving service delivery into these areas.
Yeah.
And it's a huge issue. Huge issue is that we've seen this decline in municipal service delivery globally. So that's the standout. And
that's not just a South African.
That wasn't just, so this precinct management, this notion of living in these managed areas, whether they're open areas or whether they're estates as we know them in South Africa, it's a global industry now.
Yeah.
It's a global requirement if you're going to be competitive. Number two, and funny enough, number two is something that we're seeing emerge now in our CBDs. But the issue with homelessness, closely linked to fentanyl addiction, as a direct outcome of COVID, is devastating. So these CBDs that used to be really engaging spaces are now got the scourge of homelessness and drug abuse. And with the first world legislation, it's a lot harder to be able to support these homeless and reintegration communities. It's a complex environment. I mean, I saw one of my colleagues running the largest commercial node in San Francisco. On her boundary, she's got a trailer park of RVs, of homeless people, of huge extent, that don't have sanitation, that discharge directly into the river. Really, when you see these photos, they're jarring. So the number two is homelessness and this fentanyl drug addiction, which we haven't been subject to now, is huge.
And was COVID the catalyst for that?
It was a big component of that.
Yeah.
Okay, funny enough, number three also talks directly to an outcome of COVID, and it's a mixed bag. So what are you seeing is you're seeing a retraction in demand for your high street retail, your high street offices, your formal CBD business addresses. And it's been driven by a few things. So number one is that COVID, it's the work from home and the flexibility, which we've seen a return to the office, but it's not to the same extent. Number two is the impact of online shopping, online trade has become immense. And it's directly impacting on property demand in the city. So Dublin, for example, they're busy now, private structure, the private management structure, and with property owners and the city are busy with a strategic planning session now as to how are they going to deal with this for 5, 10, 15 years' time. There's real concern. So that changing usage in your CBDs, in your commercial nodes, and what that's also doing, it's changing the usage and experience, and suddenly the coffee shop doesn't work. Now property demand's not there, and what's happening, there's a global shortage of affordable housing. So you see a conversion of commercial into residential, and those residents don't contribute internationally to these managed precinct structures. So you get a lot more complex management environment, but you get less revenue. I mean, one of the London structures was saying they lost them a third of their budget in over a 2-year period. So
because of that conversion,
because of that
residential.
So they're losing revenue to be able to supplement municipal service delivery. The situation's getting more complex and more demanding. So just in summary, it really is about, number one is this big challenge with declining municipal service delivery globally. Number two is this explosion of homeless people. And I mean, if you've been to, my wife recently got back from London. She was in the small village. She taught there for many years. She was just astounded finding, like, in a local little London village park, there's an encampment of refugees. So it's this whole homeless situation, and then it's this underlying current that's coming with this reducing demand on commercial and what impact that has. So this is And so when you look at that picture, our biggest challenge is number one. The other two, we are making, we are better managed than actually have they in what they call the first world environment.
Yeah, it's interesting when you talk about those points 2 and 3, how many of those are COVID driven and the implications it has on precinct living. Hey?
Yeah.
And Brian, I mean, like a lot of people would ask, like the logical question would be, would precinct management exist if municipalities around the world delivered on what they need to do? Or is it a lot more complex than that?
So it is more complex, but I think if you come back to the notion that precinct management is about a body of property owners getting together and saying, actual fact, we want to make sure that the spaces between our properties are managed at the same level as our offering.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the simple.
Yeah.
Distill it down to its simplicity. But we want to tell that good story about what we're doing.
Yeah.
So the very first kind of precincts, as we know it, this managed precincts, came out of Canada, funny enough, and it was all about bringing together property owners to market an area. So it was driven out of a need to market geospatial offerings.
For investment or tourism?
For whether it be tourism or investment or whatever. But back then it was about saying, come back to the CBD, come spend your money, be part of this, be part of the... And that led to a lot of the, particularly the renewals of the waterfronts and we saw that in London as well. So it was driven out of, we got a market, we got a position. So most of the budgets were spent on vast percentage on the marketing component, and way less on operations. Now, if you look what's happened now, that ratio has changed dramatically.
Yeah.
With a lot of revenue going now into supplementing actual municipal service delivery. I mean, just so we know what sort of context we're talking about. So downtown Houston, their private sector funded operational budget is $50 million.
Yeah.
Okay, so do the maths on that.
Yeah.
R1 billion.
Yeah, that's proper.
Okay. The average budget runs from about 40 million rand to about, I would say about 100 million. So, and there's upwards of, I think it's somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 of these structures globally.
Okay.
Just in some numbers, so we're aware, London has 70, as an example.
Okay.
New Zealand has 52, or 50 odd, I think. They certainly all the way through Europe, and there were guys from Scandinavia and Sweden and all over that are managing the structures. But interestingly, though, is Cape Town as a city has really embraced this structure, and they create an enabling environment for it. And there's legislation, it's in the Property Rates Act. It's the same legislation that Kwadokusa used, which is Botha, and eThekwini, which is a Greater Durban. It works very effectively, and it allows a grouping of property owners.
And those are the SIDs that they refer to?
Those are City Improvement Districts, also called Business Improvement Districts. KZN, we are always a little different. We call them Urban Improvement Precincts. But essentially, they're different mechanisms or different, let's call them terms, but they all do exactly the same thing. And that's create awesome places, geospatial places that are safe, clean, well-managed, in collaboration with the city, and you tell a good story about it. Okay, so Cape Town, they've embraced it. They have upwards of 50 what they call city improvement districts in the greater Cape Town metropole. I lived in Cape Town and so I've got a good handle on Cape Town. My good mate and colleague runs the central city, so the central downtown Cape Town. And for those that aren't aware, that runs 100 million plus budget annually.
Sure,
it's a number, and that's property owners over and above what the rates and taxes is what they're contributing towards that managed precinct that collaborates very closely with the city and provides an additional layer of service.
Okay.
And they're aggressively rolling out more in the Cape, and we're hoping certainly, I think KZN has seen the benefit of it, and it's really a collaborative structure with the municipality.
Okay.
And I think maybe just on that, and we're really proud last year with the Botha Urban Improvement Precinct, we got the award from Kwadokusa. We weren't expecting it. We were invited to the awards evening as the best community partner to Kwadokusa municipality. So it's about collaboration. If we're going to be competitive globally, if we're going to be competitive locally, we have to work with the local authority. And they got to work with us. It's not always easy, but
And so, I mean, is it fair to say that, like you talk about the budgets, and the budgets have got to go quite far because it's a big responsibility. But is it that the ratio of those budgets that are being spent on municipal delivery is significantly higher than what it used to be?
Yeah, so I think what we've got to be very cautious of here, these structures don't replace municipal services.
Yes, yeah. Yeah.
So it's like you're going to have, if the municipality delivers at, let's say, level 6,
yeah,
if you collaborate and you bring a resource to the table and you bring the right business case, you move that from 6 to 9.
Yeah. But you're finding the difference.
But you need to hit a 10.
Yeah. Makes sense, yeah.
And then, so you top that up.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just a practical example. So, for instance, I mean, on the beaches. So people get down to the beaches. I enjoy the water. I'm down. Really, I don't want to get to the beach and walk across on the way for a surf and have a messy beach. So, but because of municipal structures, they can start cleaning the beach at 8 o'clock. But by 8 o'clock, it's too late. So what we'll do is we'll have a team that will come clean the beach from 5 to when it's busiest.
Yeah.
And that resource of the municipality can do an afternoon shift.
Yeah.
So it's about saying, how do we use the resources we have and just box a lot cleverer in that space?
Okay.
But I mean, that's a very on-ground. But when we start talking about bulk infrastructure,
No.
I mean, we're very close to the cities around long-term forecasts, things like water and sanitation. I mean, these are critical issues that unlock value into the future. But you can't think about it now. You've got to be thinking about it now, tomorrow, to allow for the development trajectory that we've had here on the kind of that northern corridor.
And if we look at that summit, I mean, what is a standout model that was the best internationally, or was there quite a few that you could relate to?
So, you team me up on this question. It's really it's an interesting question. So, kind of like to answer that, I've got to use examples. So if you want to go to the Olympics and get a gold medal in middle distance or your Olympic marathon distance, okay, you want a gold medal. Where do you go and train? Well, you go and train the toughest environment in the world. You go train at altitude, and you go to Kenya and you run up in those highlands. That's why they generate those medal stations. It's part of it is driven by your geospatial context, the topography, the altitude, the culture. So when you look at our big developed world cities, so they've come from a different space from what we've come. So for the most part, what we do in terms of our services and our flexibility to close service delivery gaps, we have a much more flexibility than what they do because of their policy and legal requirements.
Okay.
So essentially, what I'm trying to articulate here is that in South Africa, where we are, we have an incredibly challenging environment. Okay, we're essentially delivering first world precincts in developing world environment.
Yeah.
You don't find that in New York, and you don't find that in Tokyo or Auckland. So because we have this incredible situation of kind of developing in first world, is that we've had to develop a level of expertise here to manage the space, which is really unlike anywhere else in the world. So when I talk to Tasso, a colleague of mine, and Derek and guys involved down in Cape Town as well, which we talk a lot to each other, is that the world that we navigate in terms of municipality and service delivery and legislation is vastly more challenging than Erica from San Francisco would ever imagine.
Yeah.
And what it's done, it's like being those highlands.
Yeah.
We've had to evolve and fill gaps that New York's going to still catch up. And that's the reality. And so because of the territory environment we've had to up our game. Our level of investment in technology compared to what they're using there, we are light years ahead. I mean, all of our management systems now are all geospatially based. It's all based on GIS. It's all integrated CRM. It's all case management systems. It's got, I mean, essentially, we're running, some would say, kind of like we're duplicating kind of the municipal function in terms of being able to incentivize and give confidence to people that these guys really have their shit together. Yeah, they look after this. They on it. They got a long-term plan. They're not looking now. They're looking 5, 10, 15 years down the line. So we've got very much geared around being able to ensure that we're future-proofing investment into, certainly I'm not going anywhere. I've lived everywhere. I've lived a lot around the world. That this is a place I'm at. Spoken to it before. So we're gearing our systems and building our relationships. Like I'm involved with the presidential working group at eThekwini set up by President Ramaphosa.
Yeah.
And it's been a hell of a robust place where private sector, government, and different spheres of government have met. But the outcome is it's really starting to turn the trajectory. We're seeing it in the numbers. We track number of all the data we're tracking. Right? We can see things are improving. And it's wonderful to be able to sit with the city manager and say, city manager, this is where it's working. We can tell you exactly what the turnaround time for your average fault report on a sewer is. And for a pothole and for electrical power failure, this is maybe a challenging area. Now, that data allows us credibility to be able to partner in a way that's ultimately delivering value back to the municipalities, because unless they grow in their rate, they don't have revenue continuity. They can't fulfill their social compact.
Yeah.
So this is very much a collaboration between private sector and the municipalities.
And a proper value proposition from your side.
Correct. And I think that's why I think that, like, and I've got to say it, the Cape area has been ahead because there's been more closer collaboration between government and private sector than what we've had elsewhere in the country. And the willingness is in KZN. I mean, we're there.
Yeah.
No, we want this to work.
And then so when you spoke to a lot of guys at the summit, the international guys, were they pretty blown away with what we got here?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's hard for me. Like I talked about, like if I had an example about beach cleaning. Okay? Or how we help and support the homeless. I mean, we've reconnected homeless folks from all over the country back to their homes. Now, they can't do that because their legislation.
It doesn't.
So where you're from, where's your family, connect you, arrange, bus ticket, go home.
Yeah.
It's not always like that, but in that space, we're not confined. We just got to make this place awesome, no matter what it takes. But we've got to collaborate with everybody. And I think part of this is also these structures. And I think maybe we need to talk more about the institutional structure and the power that this has from an investor perspective.
Yeah, so just quickly, in terms of if we look at the innovations that are happening within precincts, local, international, what are the trends we're going to see going forward that apply to South Africa and the precincts we have here?
So I think a big shift in mindset is coming from public spaces and our natural assets surround the precincts that are within the precincts that people live. So I'm going to use Sibaya because it's an excellent example.
Yeah.
So Sibaya Coastal Precinct, it has a unique mix of large tracts of open public space, coastal forest, an incredible beach space. That's all within a conservation area. Then within that, there are open commercial nodes that are trading, as you know, and then you have sort of your more traditional, let's call them secure communities, gated estate type of, I don't like the word gated estate, but it's a secure community within that. And the big drives coming from those that are living inside the fence is just like, we want to be outside of the fence. We want access into our green areas. We want to be able to walk to the beach. We want to utilize the forest. So we've opened this amazing trail network into the forest that the likes of the local Umhloti community are now using. We've got folks coming from Umhlonga Rocks. We built a boardwalk together with Enzamvelo support, turned an old derelict Enzamvelo ablution facility into like a really cool coffee shop now that funds additional safety and nature guides in the forest. So I think what's happening is that people are realizing, hold on a moment, there's life outside secure communities and living in fences. And yes, I can have this, but at the same time, how do we look for a higher order level of integration? And I think that's where different communities meet because of that. So I think really it's about saying, managed precincts are going to be saying, well, inside of our spaces is that is that unique, open, welcoming space for everyone. But we also need to push us out into our green surrounding areas, and we need to take more ownership of those, because if we don't protect and use our green spaces, okay, you lose there.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to become the big shift, is this integration between living inside secure communities, your open managed precincts, and looking for a lot more entertainment in your open precinct environments. I mean, if you can remember when they first opened the stadium down in Durban, they had People's Park in its day. We used to go down, my boys learned to ride the little bikes down there. It was cracker, but unfortunately it's no longer managed at the level it used to be. And I think if you go down the road here to Sugar Rush, I mean, it's a hub of activity and it's evolved. So I think this idea of these managed precincts are a lot more going to be built around the way and the experience of public space. It's open to all.
But it's amazing to hear that, because I think it's interesting. Like I've always said, you can't underestimate the value like Tonga Hewlett had in terms of their vision, in terms of precinct living, and what that did. We'll end off. We'll talk about value creation and what that does for investors into a Pacific area. But it's a game changer. You're looking at broader precincts, shared facilities, how everything interlinks, the fact that people can deliver better facility, the services more, which means that it just is this thing of how everyone has wanted to live, but being forced to live within these contained spaces, now being able to open it up. And I really see we've seen proper examples on our doorstep, which is amazing.
No, it's incredible. So when you ask also how when you're going back to the States, you see a retraction. So my brother-in-law lives in Vermont. He works just outside Burlington, which is that. And he was telling me they were out over Easter, and he was saying, they used to take all their clients into downtown Burlington, but they don't do it anymore because of the issues I raised earlier. And they actually been pushed back this way. And I think we're particularly in KZN, we're actually reclaiming our space. So from an international trend point of view, look, it's my opinion.
Yeah.
But I can see we're almost ahead of the trajectory of saying where everybody's coming back now, we're actually going forward and saying, in actual fact, the park down the road, yes, it may not be part of this, but let's get those folks organized there. Let's all take shared responsibility for it. Let's get kids back in the park. Let's put in posts with poop bags for dog owners and ask them to clean up. But in actual fact, it works because of public pressure and peer pressure.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of actually what's happening in South Africa, to be honest. And it's coming out of a response to what is happening in some of the biggest cities, metropoles in the country. It's about private sector and citizens and community just getting more organized. And that is precinct management. That is that collection that it happens. People call it different things, but yeah.
And I think to finish off, I mean, obviously investment's a big thing, something we promote the entire time when it comes to where to invest, what area to choose, the impact of precincts and so forth. But in your mind, what impact does that have in terms of your end user investment returns, being or investing within a precinct as such versus outside of it?
So I think let's start with the primary developer. They're going to take a piece of land and they're going to add value to that land. They're going to put in the framework plans. They're going to put in the infrastructure. Now they're going to evolve it. But at the back of their minds, they got to be thinking, the value of this is all about the perceived lifestyle and return somebody's going to have. And to deliver on that, you got to have a long-term sustainability plan in place. Because as I mentioned at the beginning, the greatest challenge you have is that municipalities and no longer deliver at the level globally that's expected. So all of this is about saying, look, I'm going to invest in this piece of dirt now, and I want to build my home there, or I'm going to build my head office there. Okay. But what I do know, if I live there or if I invest there and I'm going to run my logistic facility from there, is that I've got to know that my lifestyle and my business is going to be enabled. And I think that's a good word to use. These managed precincts enable long-term investment return and quality of life. And it's difficult to separate those because even in the commercial nodes, I mean, I was recently in a round table with Toyota, the senior leadership of Toyota, and one of their biggest challenges is attracting highly skilled professionals to work in prospecting factories. Now, that wouldn't be the thing I would expect to come from leadership of Toyota, but it's a reality. Okay, is that people's where they work, where they live, is starting to merge, not just in offices, but also in commercial nodes. And I think so. All of these precincts are saying, I want to see enabled environment to do business, to live in, that's going to add quality of life to me and is going to directly translate into a return on investment, whether you're the property owner or whether your return on investment is that having your family being able to open the car and drive down to the beach and it's clean and taken care of. So the fundamental issue here is about faith in the future, about confidence that there's an institutional structure in place, which is managed precincts, that are going to collectively protect that asset at scale. Because you can't do this on a one-on-one. This is all about scale game. You need scale. More scale you have, more efficient it is, more cost-effective it is, and most importantly, the more leverage you have in taking the business case to all spheres of government as to why we need to collaborate better for the future of our province and our city. So,
yeah, spot on. And I mean, as we wrap up, I mean, I know when you spoke about factors 2 and 3, sort of almost post-COVID things, but I think it's also, and we see it day in and day out, I think people are a lot less compromising in terms of what environment they want to create for themselves and their families. And I know we always see developers get a hard rap, but it takes a lot of vision to create these things up front and to partner with guys like yourselves and private public sector and so forth. But the legacy that those are created by those spaces that are being developed responsibly with vision and clarity, they're not going to affect as exponential, hey?
And I think it comes down to the core values and the purpose of what you're doing. And people buy into that because they can see it. Those don't mean it. And to have that long-term view and to show the commitment, I mean, in the area we're in right now, there's been a lot of show of commitment by primary developers. And I know they get a tough rap, and sometimes rightly so, and other times not. But they certainly are holding a future vision that very few appear to tread. And that vision is playing out on this kind of greater northern area where we are now, incredibly so. I think maybe just to close with this is that, so a good mate of my wife's from her varsity days, she was with And Beyond in the early days. She was a director with Ogilvy Mather. She's married to a surgeon. They live in Cape Town. He's a surgeon. I think they're in Constantia, and their young son's on a tour up here. He's at Saks. Is at Saks, and so all these Cape Town folks come up and they're flying to King Shark. And of course, what happens? You drive from King Shark to Umhlanga Rocks. They stayed in Umhlanga Rocks. It's quite an experience because you're flying to Cape Town Airport and you drive from Cape Town Airport where you're going to Stellenbosch or the city, or you're going up the West Coast. It's quite an experience, eh? So they arrived here anyway. They had the evening there, and my wife met her, and they did a walk down the Umhlanga promenade, and they walked down into the boardwalk into the forest and the forest cafes there, and they had a coffee, and then they walked back on the beach, and everything was clean. Old Belle, my wife, because Belle just said, I can't believe this. She said, she cannot believe this. I was talking to my wife coming here. Her husband as well turned around and said, it's extraordinary. And I think that's what we have here. And I think that's one of the challenging narratives we have in KZN, is that you really don't know what you know. It's really yeah, absolutely. It's extraordinary. So that was just a little story to close off on, is that we've got something special happening in KZN.
No, spot on. Brian, thank you. It's always a massive privilege chatting to you, and so much knowledge and passion, and yeah, it inspires me when I get to chat to you, because it's people like you who make a massive change. And thanks for your time, and great to see you.
Thanks, Stefan. And just a big thank you to you and your team as well for giving me this opportunity and that representing my team in the many different precincts we managed to take the word out there is that communities in South Africa got to get organized. And if you get organized and you take responsibility and you collaborate with your local authority, it's a good place, eh? Love this country.
It is.
Thanks you.
Thank you.